Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So in this video I made plantation shutters from scratch. This project cost me £48 to build, so if you'd like to know how I made this, then keep watching. So the first step is measuring the length and width of the window, and this is how I worked out where to cut my wood. You also need to account for the width of the wood you're using, as this will affect your measurements. I bought my wood at my local DIY shop and had them cut to size by a friend. I'd also recommend using wood that's around 20mm thick. Next I put the cut wood pieces for the frames in position to work out where the screws joining them would go. So here I'm marking where my screws will be drilled to join the wood pieces together. The nails need to be long enough to go through both pieces of wood. The width of my wood was 63mm, so I used nails that were 100mm long. So these crosses show where I'm going to drill, and if you're using a hand drill, make sure you're holding the drill straightly and not at a bent angle. So here I'm screwing the screws in, and I'm using weights just to stop it from shifting, and I didn't drill the holes in the short frame because I used softwood, so the nails made the holes as I screwed in more. And then I double checked that the frames fit my window correctly, and next is to work on the louvers. So I used cladding to create the louvers, which was a great and lightweight substitute, which I cut to size myself. And the louver should be the exact same length as the short wood frames. So after I had cut them, I marked where the middle of each louver was, as this is where the pivot pins will go, which allows the shutters to rotate. And next I drilled holes about 1 inch deep where the centre mark is, and you want to make sure to use the correct drill bit for this, one that is the same size as the pivot pins, and be very careful not to accidentally drill through the wood. And I used 2-inch wooden rods as my pivot pins. So next I put my louvers along the frame and traced over the points where the pivot pins were. It's important when marking the first one to test that it can rotate without hitting the top frame, otherwise the shutters won't be able to close properly. Then just continue marking where the pins are all along the frame. Also make sure that the louvers overlap slightly so there won't be any gaps when they're closed. So here you can see my continued markings all along the frame, which is where the holes will be drilled for the pivot pins to be slotted into. And for more accuracy, I outlined squares in the middle of the markings to know the exact points for drilling. So I drilled about 1 inch deep along the frames, and I'm just using spare wood to hold the frames in position as I drill these holes. So this is how my plantation shutters were looking with the louvers attached, and next is to create the clearance slots. So the clearance slot helps block out more light when the shutters are closed using tilt rods. So to do this, draw a square slightly wider than the tilt rods in the middle of each top frame only and carve it out. I carved mine out with a craft knife and it should look something like this. So the next thing to do is mark the centre of all the louvers, which we will need for the tilt rod. The tilt rod is used to control the louvers, and this is how they are able to open and close in unison. And next I screwed in screw eyes at the middle mark of all the louvers, as this is how I will connect them to the tilt rods later. So when painting, I use 750ml of Dulux quick drying satin wood paint in the shade Pure Brilliant White. I did 2 coats for everything and I still had some paint left for touch-ups. I also mixed my paint with about 5 to 10% water to help the paint flow a bit easier. So here's how my wood pieces were looking after 1 coat of paint, and I was very happy with the finish. I also lightly sanded between coats just to give it a smoother look, and I'd also recommend sanding before painting the first coat, which I didn't do but wish I had. And just another tip, when you're painting with a paintbrush, it's better to have continuous stroke marks along the wood to avoid stop marks. So now the paint is dry, it can be assembled. And the reason I have a louver missing on each door is because this is where the tension louvers will go. The tension louvers are what allow the shutters to stay open at any position, and they need to be attached differently. And the 4 tension louver holes need to be drilled completely through the frame, which I've already done here. And here I'm using my hand drill to screw the nails back into the frame again, just to make sure they are screwed in securely and tightly. So to make tension, I screwed in flat end screws to the louvers. I used flat end screws because I think they provide better pinch pressure than pointy end screws, and the more you screw, the stiffer the louver will get, which is how it's able to stay open at any position like this. So next I marked the points on the tilt rods that were in line with the louver screw eyes. This is so I can know where to put the screw eyes on the tilt rod that will connect onto the louvers. And now I'm screwing the screw eyes in where my markings were. So I opened up the ends of all the screw eyes along the tilt rod with pliers so I could hook them easily through each closed louver screw eye. And then after connecting all the tilt rod screw eyes to the louver screw eyes, I closed them up by pinching them together. And the last step is to mark where the hinges will go. So when doing this, make sure the outlines for the hinges are in line with each other, and then finally attach the other half of the hinges by drilling them into the window bay walls. So when drilling the other half of the hinges into the wall, it's best to use long multi-purpose screws, and I'd recommend using wall plugs for extra support. And that's it guys, this was so much fun to build. Although it was definitely a challenge figuring out how to make this without professional equipment, I'm very happy with how it turned out. I'll detail the cost breakdown in the description box below, but aside from that, thank you for watching and I hope you enjoyed this video.